Cool. Here we are talking about coaching. I'm Yannick, as always, here with Nicki, Siwash. Hey, guys.
Hey,
Hey,
hey.
We've got a question today. Do we have a name? I don't think we do. No, it was anonymous. Picked up somewhere. What is the hardest part about being a coach? And I got to say, I have not thought about this at all. So we just brought up the question and you resonated with it. So here we are. What's the hardest part about being a coach? In the 15 minutes we've got left in today's recording session, this could be a very short or a very long episode, but well, it won't be a very long episode. We know that. But what's your instinct, or what was your thinking? Have you thought about this before, or is this also as fresh as it is to me right now?
Yeah, this question has come up a lot, especially in the recent months. For me, like around a year ago, I started doing jiu-jitsu, so martial arts, and one of the things that I had a conversation with one of my teachers, and I was asking him like how many people get to blue belt. So you have white belt and blue belt, and then purple belt, brown belt, black belt. And he said, well, most people quit at white belt. So, and I started seeing this that over the months, every time the class was growing and growing and growing, and he's like, "Don't worry, like it will naturally get smaller and smaller." And on average, it takes I think like 8 to 10 years in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to become a black belt. And even then, you're not done. Like if you really want to, you can continue another 10 years. So for me, like I started really reflecting on that and seeing that well, actually, it's very similar in coaching. You know, like anyone and everyone can like become a white belt. Like just do a little course on Udemy, or there's so many, £7, $7 courses available. And then you have, of course, proper coaching diplomas, right? They're usually like 4 months, 6 months. But even then, I think like, so coming back to the question, what's the hardest part of being coach? I think the hardest part is, the easy part is becoming a white belt and calling yourself a coach. But the hardest part is, I think, like committing to that mastery, right? And I think one of the things that makes it really hard is this false expectation. Like I had that when I came in. I was like, okay, well, I can just come in and make really good money, become really good at this quickly, and then realizing that well, it's gonna take a lot of time, right? Like the diploma really helped. I did that in my second year, but just realizing like there's a lot of work. There's a lot of different things that we need to pay attention to. And I think what it does, right, that there's that initial excitement, and then when you really realize like how much work's involved, and I had that with jiu-jitsu, like all my motivation dropped. I'm like, oh my days, right? Like it's gonna take me 10 years to get good at this. And then when I say good, by the way, that's my idea of a black belt. But if you look at coaches, most coaches, when they really commit to the profession and the craft, in 2 years, they're already, sometimes even in a year, and people get do quite well. They make a difference in the client's life. They already start earning. So I don't want to, make it like look like you need 10 years to become really good. But I think that's the part for me. It was like one is a false expectation. The other thing is, it's just that becoming a dentist or a doctor, you don't have that 4 year
It's the
degree,
dentists again.
right? Yeah, but I think that's one of the things that we have this lack of clarity. Okay, we can do one degree, and a lot of coaching schools now are really good. They have, maybe 4 or 5 courses that can really take you on this road. But not again. Thing is that lack of clarity around like what is it gonna take really for me to go from level 1 to level 2, or from blue belt to, from white belt to blue belt to black belt, right? So
Yeah.
that lack of clarity, I think, creates a lot of, that I think that's one of the things that makes it really hard.
Yeah, there's a few things I want to say. One is, I think there's an unrealized dentist in you. We haven't heard about the dentist in a little while, but occasionally it leaks, and so I think there's a dentist in you somewhere. But, the other one is that I think The hardest part is a very difficult thing to answer. Certainly, we can't make any generalized statements about it, right? Different people will find different things the hardest. What I hear quite often from coaches is that the building a business is the hardest part. They find it easy to coach, they find it hard to build a business. And usually people get drawn into the practice of coaching. And then the business of coaching becomes the thing that they have to do in order to coach. And then it becomes a means to an end rather than a thing that you signed up for. And if we find ourselves having to do a thing, for me that's really hard because I didn't really sign up for that. Another one is that you said it's easy to become a coach and call yourself, or do a diploma and call yourself a coach, and I think they're two very different things. And I know from working with so many coaches that calling yourself a coach, it's a much harder thing to do than getting the diploma or a certificate or train or do the coaching. Right? There's something about the jumping, the putting the LinkedIn post out there, the owning the identity of a coach, the admitting to maybe your employer or your colleagues that you also do other work, which is coaching, dealing with the stigma of coaching, especially life coaching, that, in many countries, depending on where you are, there's still you are one of those, you know, depending where you are, there can be a lot of stigma, and it can be very difficult and very hard for people to say and own that label, right? So calling yourself a coach, I think, I know is very hard for a lot of people, and really stepping into that. Now I am a coach, and there's a lot of people who do coaching, and there's not that many who are coaches. And then there's people who are coaches, they're just so natural at it, but they really struggle to own that part of their identity, So I think that's a hard part, and I know that's the hardest part for at least a good number of coaches. Yeah, I'll pause there. Nicki, what do you think?
I can really relate to everything you guys have already said, especially what you were just saying about calling yourself a coach, Yannick. I really feel that stigma, and I still haven't decided a terminology that's comfortable. Like, I go from life coach to personal development coach to, I don't know, transformational coaching, which was my diploma. So I can really relate to that, as well as the aspect of building a business. What really comes up for me is compartmentalizing personal life and events from kind of professionalism. And it's interesting because, there's a life coach in me, and then there's a surf coach, and that operates on a more day-to-day basis at the moment in my life. But even there, I think, my personal journey, I think, has been quite, coaching's been quite a difficult thing to do for me, because in the last years, I've had some seriously big knocks in my life, like back to back, which has never kind of, I feel, sadly allowed me to really feel like I have the presence and stuff I need to be a coach. So in that sense, it's the compartmentalizing. I think you can only take people in part as far as you've been, and from a position of personal kind of struggle, I think, try and coach people at the level that, perhaps personally I feel I want to be present to be able to do. That's just not been possible. But I still have that hope that I can come back to it as I continue to process all the knocks that have come my way, unforeseeably. So yeah, I think compartmentalizing personal life and struggles from the space you have to hold as a coach.
Yeah, and I hear that narrative quite a lot from coaches. There's this idea that you cannot take someone further than you have gone yourself, or that, if you've got challenges in your life, you need to have all of your ducks in a row in order to help someone figure out their ducks. And that's an unhelpful narrative, right? Because in some ways, I understand if you have gone through stuff and you have sorted it out, you can hold space with more presence, right? With more confidence, perhaps. If you start having doubts because somebody wants to get fit and you're struggling with that, which is some of my narrative that I have, right? When somebody comes and they want to, lose weight, get fit, do regular exercise, do something that involves discipline and organization, which is not my strong suit. I have that voice in me too. I'm like, yeah, but I haven't figured this out. How can I help somebody else figure that out? And every time when I just hold space for people and I get curious and, remind myself that people are different to me, then I don't need to have everything figured out. I can be in a challenging personal spot and leave my stuff at the door. as long as I'm able to put my shit in the box and keep the lid on when it's my stuff. Right? Sometimes our stuff is helpful to work with in the coaching room because it's being created in the moment in relation. But if I have stuff going on, that doesn't belong here. That's my stuff, and we can learn to do that. We need to have done our work, right, so that we can distinguish what's my stuff and what's been created here. Resist the temptation to bring my stuff into the room when it's not helpful or relevant. That can be the hardest part for a lot of coaches. But yeah, I think it's only so hard because when coaches believe that they need to have everything figured out. And there's another one I wanted to pick up on from Siwash, is that those coaches, I heard Professor David Clutterbuck, who many of our listeners will know as one of the thought leaders and pioneers in coaching and mentoring. There's a global supervisors network that meet regularly, and they talked about AI and supervision. And what he said is that the coaches who are at that very first level, the ones who are just following methodologies, the one that are doing the coaching and following the models to the letter, AI will replace them. That's the coaches that AI systems will replace. And David called it that they're already dead, they just don't know it yet. And it got me Walking Dead zombie pictures in. They're like, they're going to try to stay one ahead of the curve. But in the context of AI, coaches really need to work a lot harder to become better coaches. Lean into the humanness, lean into the existential, the gestalt, the person-centered, the presence, the somatic, the empathy, the emotional intelligence-oriented approaches. Right? Because if you're just following a methodology that you've picked up from a $7 coaching certificate, you're going to be obsolete. And that's a reality for coaches. And coaches ask themselves, will I be replaced by AI? Well, only if you don't develop beyond those first levels of coaching. So I think a hard part of, staying ahead of the curve, and yes, the coaching world will thin out because of AI. That's true. Just like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, that was your experience, right? And I think that will also be the experience in coaching, that those who are not committed to going further, really leaning into the humanness and the relational coaching. If you struggle with that, then that's going to be hard. So the hardest part about coaching could be to stay ahead of AI capabilities.
Wow.
Yeah, I think you can look at it from so many ways, right? I love the conversation around AI, and I think even the conversation about business, that was one of the things that came up for me. But I think it's interesting, right? One way to look at it, I know people that run incredible successful businesses, and it's just because they're so good at coaching, they will meet people. They're not necessarily like really, they haven't put a lot of attention towards sales and marketing, but they just love meeting people and getting with people and getting in rooms with people, getting conversations with people, and they can create impact through that, right? And as you're listening, you're gonna like this. I came up with another distinction: the coach versus the dentist.
Of course.
because here's the thing, right? If you read, a lot of this comes back to that, like, as a coach, if we actually show up like a dentist will just basically, well, hey, this is my profession. Okay, I just had a big fight with my wife, but okay, I got a 9:00 appointment. I'm gonna go and treat this patient, and then I'm just gonna park it. I'm gonna get present, do my best, and I'll deal with the situation at home at 4:00 or 5:00 when I get home. I'm not saying that's always. It's not about just completely ignoring those feelings, but it's showing up as the professional, right? And this is one of the reasons I think a lot of times that dentist comes up, because the dentist will, I get a reminder from my dentist all the time, like, okay, your check-in is due, your 6-month check-in or 3-month check-in, whatever it is, right? And they're just showing up as a professional, and I'm sure they have all their own stuff going on, right? And I think that's sometimes the hardest thing is, and I've seen that in my own journey, is just sometimes like when things are going on at home or in my own life, right? Like, there's this resistance to showing up, because we have almost this misunderstanding, right, that we need to have it all together. Yeah. And I'm sure we've all seen this, right? I've seen it the times where my business struggled. I've helped people build incredible business, not by advising them, but just coaching them, by creating space and asking them questions. The same with relationships, right? And there's always this ongoing discussion, right, around like, can you coach someone in an area that you don't have success? For me, that's definitely a yes. Because if you become a really good coach, you can coach people in any area of life and help them create transformation.
Yeah. Hey, we need to put a pin in this or leave it here, for us at least. I'm super curious what's the hardest part for people who are listening to this. So if you could drop us a note in some way, if you're listening to this as a comment on YouTube, on social media, via email, I'd be super curious to hear. So with that, thank you so much, Nicki. I know you need to go. Good to hang out with you. Siwash, we're going to keep recording. I hope you enjoyed this. And as always, start a conversation. Thank you so much.
All right, take care.
Thank you for being with us today. I appreciate your commitment to learning and growing as a coach. Just a few things before you go. First of all, we're doing this for you. So if there's anything you'd like us to talk about, do send us a question. Secondly, we're not doing this for profit, so we rely on your support to help us reach as many coaches as we can. So if you can send this episode to a friend or tell a fellow coach about what we're doing here, maybe you can subscribe or leave us a review or even support us on Patreon. That would be amazing. And lastly, you can find us across all major platforms. So whether you like to watch or you like to listen or you like to download episodes and listen to it in your car while you're driving through somewhere with no internet, you can do so too. And that's it from us. Thank you, and I hope to see you next time.